Hi, I'm Mark Walker, and this is my book, World Jazz Drumming, published by Hal Leonard. I want to show you Brazilian drumming today. We're going to talk about samba, the percussion instruments, and how to apply them to the drum set. I've always tried to get an authentic feel with what I was doing. When I first started playing samba, I learned repertoire, and it wasn't until much later that I learned percussion instruments, but both of those things helped me so much. And so I hope to help you get your samba feel authentic. So what we're going to do first is demonstrate some of the percussion instruments, just a few of them, Surdo, Tamborim, and Ganza, and show how these instruments fit into the ensemble and how to apply them to the drum set. Then we'll talk about a few tricks of the trade that I use on drums and have a lot of fun with it. Thanks for joining us. Welcome, fellow drummers. My name is Mark Walker, and I'm here to talk about samba drumming. In order to know how to play an authentic samba feel, I think it's very important to know some of the Brazilian percussion instruments, rhythms, phrasing, and concepts. So we'll be showing you the samba drumming instruments, the percussion instruments from Brazil, the surdo, the tamborim, the shaker, and some of the other instruments. Then later on we'll go to the drum set and I'll show you how they're applied to the drums, and also show you some concepts that I use to imitate the sound of all the percussion instruments together. We're going to begin with the surdo. The surdo provides the backbone for samba. This is the surdo. It's the bass drum of Brazilian music. And there are a few different size surdos. We have a large one here and a small one, which I'll play later. The surdo provides the backbone or the backbeat of all of samba. And in the Brazilian carnival, you can have as many as 300 surdo players, if you can imagine that. When you play surdo, you have to know that samba is felt, played, and sometimes written in two. So there's a big feeling of two, almost like walking. And the strong beat in samba is on the second beat. So a very simple surdo pattern would be 1, 1, 2, 1, 1. And when we start the surdo pattern, we always play a pickup because it really literally picks up the music. So I'll count it off and then play a pickup and play a samba groove. 1, 2, 1, and 2. Another way of playing the samba groove on this surdo is to play every beat with a mallet and muffle certain beats with a hand. So you're going to muffle beat 1 and play beat 2 open, like this. 1, 2, 1, and 2. So here's a faster version of samba with this technique. 1, 2, 1. This is the Surdo di corci, which means the cutter. And the reason it's called the cutter is because it's got a much higher pitch than the other surdos. And the part's a little bit more busy too. I'll show you a basic surdo part that I just played. And then the part for this surdo, it's a lot different. 1, 2, 1, 2. So the function of this is to play a more syncopated pattern and give it a little kick. There are actually 3 different surdos playing at the same time in the samba batucada, or the bateria, which is the percussion section. This size surdo, which is the surdo marcação, the large one. There's a slightly smaller surdo called the surdo resposta, which plays a response, and they play the open tone on 1 instead of on 2. And finally, the Surdo di corci, which I played, which is the small surdo, which is the higher pitched one, which cuts through. You can play the Surdo di corci pattern on any size surdo. So now I'm going to demonstrate it on the large surdo. 1, 2, 1, and 2. Now sometimes I use the rim in certain patterns. I'll demonstrate a basic rim pattern incorporating the rim, and then a more busy pattern, Surdo di corci-like pattern incorporating the rim as well. Here's a simpler pattern. 1, 2, 1, and 2. Now here's the more complicated pattern on the Surdo di corci played on this larger drum. 1, 2, 1, and 2. So all these surdos are being played at the same time, and they're sort of a counterpoint to the sound. This is the tamborim, not to be confused with the tambourine that we know in the Western world. This is played with a stick and sometimes with something called a baqueta de tamborim, which means tambourine stick. And there are 2 ways to hold this and 2 ways to play this. Pretty standard way of playing it is to have the thumb on top, fingers inside, one finger sometimes muffling, and another finger sometimes playing ghost notes. Now, a basic tamborim phrase, and this is very important for drum set, there's one phrase that starts on the beat, like this. So let me count it in. 1, 2, 1, 2. So you see it starts on the beat and anticipates into the second measure. It's basically a 2-measure phrase. You can also play it on the other side, starting with an anticipation. So I'll count this in. 1, 2, 1, and 2. Now the other way of holding this is with the thumb on the outside, and this is called virada style. In virada style, we play the tamborim with a different stick. I'm going to use a ruta, and we twist the instrument. And this is a kind of key to how we get this Brazilian 16th feel, how we interpret this feeling. So we play this phrase. So 1E, a 2E, a 1E, a 2E, a 1. And on the E, the second note, we twist the instrument, and as we're coming back up with the stick, we get an accidental hit, which completes the sound. So here it is very slowly. So here it is in double time. 1, 2, 1, and 2. Okay, when you play tamborim virada style, you're not actually pressing against the head on the inside, you're just pressing against the body of the instrument. And your thumb is also on the outside, so you're just touching the shell, basically. And with this phrase, 1E, a 2E, a 1E, a 2E, and this accidental note you get on the way back up, this kind of defines the pocket of Brazilian samba. And if you learn to play this phrase, you'll get an idea of how it should sound on the drum set, which I think is very important. I think really to get this feel, you have to listen to a lot of Brazilian music and absorb it and digest it. Then it will come out naturally, because if you try to think about it, it's not going to happen. That's just the way it is. Okay, so here again is the phrase. 1E, a 2E, a 1E, a 2E. And since we're playing this with one hand, there's no reason you couldn't play this with one hand on the drum set while playing something else. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Now this, of course, is the shaker, as you know, and called Ganza in Portuguese. We shake this back and forth. And it's important to note the direction that you shake it in will give you a different feel. If you shake it straight up and down, you get kind of a shuffle or swing feel. But if you shake it straight back and forth, then you'll get an even feel. So what we do is shake it straight back and forth and more forcefully on some beats to get certain accents. So what you could do is take any shaker and start to shake it where the downbeat is away from you, and accent that to begin with. 1. Then the pickup to the downbeat is going to get an accent too. So you shake it a little bit more forcefully towards you and then away from you. So. And this part is very important because a lot of what we play on drum set, if we're playing with a lot of percussionists or if we're playing a more sparse part on the hi-hat, sounds exactly like this. So I think it's important to know where the accents are and know how to get a good feel. And you can play it very evenly, like this, or a little more in the Brazilian pocket. Okay, so how do you get that feel? It's a little bit more based on a triplet kind of feel. So I would say listen to a lot of samba and start to imitate that by singing it like I just did. And then trying to get it physically on the instrument. To get the Brazilian feeling, the samba feeling, I think not only do you have to listen to it and kind of work out what it is, but you actually have to use it. You have to play it. That's how it's worked for me over the years. I first heard the music and I started to play it, and I learned as I went along and learned about the percussion, and it's really helped a lot. Okay, now we're at the set. Let's apply what we learned so far about the Surdo, Tamborim, and Ganza. So let's start with the Surdo. I'm going to demonstrate a few ways of playing that on the kit. The Surdo, as you know, is the big bass drum that has mostly the open tones on beat 2. You can do that by hand on the floor tom if you just want to get the one drum like this. 1, 2, 1 and 2. You can also play it on the bass drum, of course, and there's a couple of different ways I want to show you how to play it. One, just kind of a standard way of playing it, and one where you actually play dead strokes and open strokes. Here's probably the most common bass drum ostinato for samba. 1, 2, 1 and 2 and. Now, a lot of guys play it heel up. I find it's more relaxing for the body to play it heel down. And if I need more volume, I just pull my foot back like this. And then I get more volume. 1, 2. Because what's happening, the beater's pulling back, hitting the drum, and coming off. That's it. So whether your heel is up, down, or anywhere in between, try to make sure you're coming off the drum so you get the full frequency spectrum of the vibrating head. Now, I mentioned a dead stroke. Here's another way of playing it. You actually play the first stroke into the head and leave it there, and then play the second stroke off the head. So in essence, it's kind of like what we played on the floor tom or what we played on the big surdo. So the thing you want to try to avoid is flamming or getting a buzz when you play into the head. Just make sure it's a really clean, crisp, dead sound just for that stroke. And it doesn't have to be really loud. It can be softer because basically your strong beat is on beat 2. I just want to talk for a second about bass drum tuning. If you are playing in a kind of a pop context with a large bass drum, maybe muffled down, then I think a lot of the patterns that work really well are the patterns where you're playing goong 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 goong. Because since the drum's muffled down already, the dead strokes and open strokes really wouldn't make that much of a difference. And On the other hand, if you're playing a small 18-inch bass drum, maybe that's open in a jazz situation, you might want to play something that's more like a surdo, the open and closed sounds. So you could approach it more like that. What I do sometimes, because I play so many different kits at so many different venues, whatever there is, I'll make it work. That's my philosophy. If I get an 18-inch bass drum that's really open and I need to make it sound more muffled, I'll just put a towel in between the pedal and the head. Make sure it's low enough and that it's away from the spring so it doesn't interfere with the action of the machinery. But it's a nice way to muffle the drum and still have somewhat of an open sound. Now, when I do a local gig where I can bring my own set, then I usually use an 18 or a 20. And I have a little bit of muffling inside, but enough to get an open sound or a closed sound if I want to. But yet, if I went boom, 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 it wouldn't be sustaining forever. So I always try to take something that I can modify somehow for the tune or for the situation. Okay, now we're going to apply the tamborim part to the snare drum. So you remember the tamborim part, there were two ways to play it. One was this style, and the other was the virata style. I'm going to take the first way of playing this and play a couple of these phrases on the cross stick and then show you how to apply it to the snare and toms. Pay particular attention to where the downbeat is on this phrase. I'm going to play the bass drum while I play this. 1, a 2, a 1 and 2 and. Okay, now we put it on the cross stick. Now, the thing you really have to pay attention to here is making sure everything lines up, because sometimes the bass drum could rush and it could play a flam before the beat comes down. You want to try to avoid that. If everything's together, everything is stronger. So the best thing to do is play it a lot slower than I'm playing it now. 1 and 2 and. Okay, now if I add 16ths on the hi-hat, if we're in 2/4, it sounds like this. Okay, now if I reverse the phrase and start on the second measure, it becomes something different. 1 and 2 and 1. Okay, so why am I playing it in different places? Because different songs have different melodies, and the melodies have specific rhythms that if you play the first pattern, sometimes it works better, but sometimes it works better if you play the second pattern. Really, I'm playing the same pattern, just arranged differently. And after a while, what you want to do is get away from playing the same pattern all the time and start to improvise with it, but keeping the feeling of that pattern. All the great players do this and think like this, even the great rock players. They constantly refresh the pattern so that it sounds good. So I'll give you a little bit of this basic pattern that I've played at first, and with a little improvisation, a little refreshment. Okay, 1, 2, 1 and 2. Okay, so I played a lot of different stuff, but I might not play that much if I were playing in the context, because I'd be listening to everyone else and trying to complement what's going on with them. So I might be playing about a third of the stuff I just played. Now, another way of applying this tamborim pattern is to play the taps that I played on the inside before. So here's the same pattern I just played with the taps. If you put that all on the snare, with the main accents being in the right hand, you have something like this. Now, if I play a sped up version of it and just play beat 2 on the bass drum, like a surdo, it sounds something like this. I think that when you play samba, you have to be prepared to play at a whisper and at a roar, and anywhere in between, because you might play with a bunch of percussionists at Carnival. You might play with an acoustic guitar player and a singer singing without a mic, or you could be playing with electric instruments or acoustic piano trio. So you should have the control to play any pattern you wish at any volume you wish, and orchestrate it in ways that fit whatever your situation is. So I worked on that a lot because I played with players that hate loud music. So I was able to get the control in the softer volume levels, and I came from playing rock, so I kind of know how to play loud. In the virada style playing of tamborim, which sounds like this: 1, 2, 1, and 2, and. You can apply that to one hand or two hands on the set, and here's how. With the snare drum, you can play it on the right hand and just fill in the left as that accidental note that you get back, coming back up. So in other words, you're going to play 1E, a 2E, a 1E, a 2E with one hand, and play a very light and with the other. It's important to keep this light in order to keep the phrase balanced the way it should be. Sounds like this: 1, 2, 1. You can also play it the other way with the left hand playing 1E, a 2E, and the right hand playing a very light and. So 1, 2, 1, 2. One of my favorite ways to apply this rhythm also is on the hi-hat with the left hand. You play 1E, a 2E, and you open the hi-hat slightly on the E, close it on the and, so you get that light note in between, and then you've got a nice pattern going here. Sounds like this: 1, 2, 1, 2. I think if you're trying to play these rhythms and trying to get the exact feel of Brazilian samba, you could work with a metronome with quarter notes, but if you try to program 16th notes, it wouldn't quite work because the 16ths aren't quite 16ths. There's something else related to triplets. It's not swung 16ths, it's not straight 16ths, but it's somewhere, it's got its own pocket. And really to demonstrate what that feels like, you have to go back to the percussion instruments and really study how they're supposed to feel. 1, 2. So those are a few applications of the tamborim to the drum set. And I think, again, I have to emphasize listening to the music, really absorbing it, and letting that feel become part of you. Then it'll come out naturally. But knowing the mechanics of the parts will really help too, because then you know how it works. Okay, so far we've applied rhythms of the surdo and the tamborim to the drum set. Now it's time to apply some of the Ganza rhythms to the drum set. Now the Ganza you know as a shaker, and it's important to know that you shake it back and forth rather than up and down to get the feel for samba. So I'm going to just demonstrate that for a second, the difference between those two feels. Here's a samba feeling, and here it is shaken up and down. Totally different feel. So, again, we have an accent on the downbeat and the pickup. Now, it's kind of important to keep the feeling of 2 in mind rather than 4, because that sounds a lot different. It doesn't really fit samba. So keep that big quarter note feeling in mind, and then you have the feel. Okay, so the most obvious place to apply it would be the hat, and basic pattern would be accent on 1 and 2, and then the accents on the last 16th note before the downbeat. So. You can also play the Ganza and the hi-hat on the upbeat, and it sounds good too. I'm talking about the and. So I'll demonstrate that on the Ganza first and the hi-hat next. 1, 2, a 1 and 2 and. Okay, 1, 2. One of the things you can do with the Ganza as a variation is to play 30-second notes within the pattern. And you do that by just shaking it double time within the pattern. So I'll do it very slowly at first and then speed it up. 1. Okay, here's a up to tempo. 1. Now another thing you can do is to vary the accents, to kind of improvise the accents, not play the same accents all the time. So this requires the control and the ability to play an accent on the fly. 1, 2. Now I'll demonstrate this on the hi-hat. So first, putting in the 30-second notes in the pattern, hopefully tastefully. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2. And then varying the accents. 1, 2, 1, 2. Now here's a combination of both of those concepts. 1, 2, 1, 2. So when you use these techniques of altering the accents and adding 30-second notes, I would say use them like you would use a spice. Too much would totally ruin the meal, but just the right amount is perfect. So in these lessons, we're basically scratching the surface of samba drumming. There are many, many more concepts and many different styles to learn in playing this music. And a lot of these styles can be found in my book, World Jazz Drumming, published by Hal Leonard. So check it out. There's some play-along tracks and a lot of patterns to learn.